Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Depot Dive. I'm Ross McCorkle, and above me here on the screen, as always, is my co-host Joe Clark. And that was a pretty fun one on Sunday. The Steelers put up, something that we haven't seen in literally years and years. I can't even remember, barely remember back to the last time they did that well on offense, putting up 44 points, over 500 yards. We're going to talk about that game today. We're going to recap some of the injury news from Mike Tomlin's Tuesday press conference and some of his other topics in that press conference. And then we're going to march on to the Browns game, the rematch coming up this Sunday. And it's going to be a chippy one. So we'll talk about all of that and more. Joe, how are you doing today?
Doing well. That was definitely a fun game. Pretty high scoring for an AFC North affair. Lots to talk about though, so it was a good one.
Highest scoring game of the year, right?
Yeah, I think across the entire league.
That is, not something that you'd have on your bingo card for any game involving the Steelers. And you'd assume, if you heard that and you didn't know what the score was, you'd assume probably that the Steelers got absolutely blown out. But pleasant surprise there with the Steelers coming out with a win, advancing to 9-3 on the season. One more non-losing season for Tomlin that extends him to 18 straight. He still has never had one. I think the Steelers are now tied for the overall league record, I think, which was Tom Landry's 21 straight with the Cowboys. So they're, one more season away from breaking that record. Tomlin's a couple, I think three more seasons away from tying Landry. So not that anyone cares about that stuff. I know we're all sick of hearing that every year. Now it comes down to actually winning in the playoffs. But Joe, I know we talked a few weeks ago. One of our listeners called in and asked, do you believe that this team is a Super Bowl contender? You were more hesitant, I guess I'll say, and I was open to it. I wasn't fully on board. Where are we at now? Just a temperature check.
I think we have to see them play with some measure of consistency. Obviously, this came after they lost. Granted, it was in the snow and the wind to the Browns. So I think we still haven't seen them play the Chiefs. I want to see them play the Eagles. I want to see how they stack up against a team that's not a team that's at the cream of the crop. That's not the Ravens, I guess. Because the Steelers have had the Ravens number. Even last season they beat them twice, and last season the Steelers really weren't all that competitive when it came to going up against the Bills in the playoffs and the best of the best. So I want to see how they hang with the teams that right now are kind of considered the best of the best. So until then, I'm still going to say that I'm a little still tepid, I guess, and saying that yes, they're definitely a Super Bowl contender. But if the offense can play the way that they played on Sunday, or at least even close to it, and the defense can continue to come up with timely plays and force turnovers, then yeah, I'll be a little more confident. I just want to see them do it, against the Eagles or against the Chiefs.
Yeah, it's totally fair. I thought it was interesting. I don't know if you saw, I put a screenshot of an article you wrote basically, I think it was exactly 6 months, maybe 6 months plus a day back in June, to an article I wrote yesterday, both off of ESPN's Football Power Index, which is just an analytics thing that combines offense, defense, special teams, efficiency, all this stuff, advanced analytics, and kind of comes up with various probabilities. And the one you wrote 6 months ago said over a 30% chance at a top 10 draft pick in the 2025 NFL draft. And now they're giving them a over 70% chance to win the AFC North and just below a 10% chance at reaching the Super Bowl this year. And so how 6 months has changed kind of how we look at the Steelers. And, I don't think anyone really saw this coming. I think we both predicted 10 wins, but I don't think we saw maybe this level of success. They're looking at getting their 10th win in week, 14. So pretty impressive year for the Steelers, and they proved something that we didn't think was possible, winning in a shootout. I want to talk a little bit about that, Joe. Just talk about the performance of Russell Wilson.
Yeah, he was fantastic. I think, we have to kind of preface this by saying the Bengals defense has been really bad all season. They were down one of their top corners in DJ Turner, who got hurt, I think, in their last game before the bye. So yeah, the Bengals defense wasn't good, but the Steelers offense still came to play. Best game of the season for Russell Wilson, 414 yards. And what I really liked was he wasn't so overly reliant on the deep ball. So this season, I think we've kind of seen, especially in some of the games where they've struggled, that if the downfield passing attack of the moon ball is not working, then the overall passing attack kind of falters. Against the Bengals, the Steelers kind of made a concerted effort to work underneath, whether it's quick game to the running backs or just, Pat Fryermuth had a couple of nice plays. I think he finished with 68 yards. Just all in all, the Steelers worked the ball underneath. It wasn't so throw it up to George Pickens or throw it up deep and see what happens and let's try to make a play there. I think it was mentioned in the Mike Tomlin press conference today. They had the highest amount of yak out of any team this season. So they're getting guys in open space, letting them create after the catch. And what was I think they had? Let me double check. It was one, two, three, four guys over 50 receiving yards, and I think 10 different guys caught a pass, which hasn't happened, I think, probably ever in Steelers history. So all around, just a really great game plan. I think Najee Harris said we kind of knew what they were going to do, and they instituted Arthur Smith and they worked on the quick game. I mean, Harris was involved; he had 6 catches. Jalen Warren had 4 catches. Firemouth had 6 catches. Cordell Patterson had 3 catches. So kind of those guys that would expect to work in those underneath spaces really came through. That's something I want to see the Steelers continue to do throughout the season is kind of expand, not make their passing game so reliant on the downfield passing attack because Russell Wilson's really good at it. But if that's the only thing he's really good at, then the upside is capped on this offense. And seeing him kind of pick the defense apart and work the ball around was really, I think, the most promising takeaway of this game for me.
Yeah, I wrote about it before the season that Russell Wilson and Arthur Smith's offenses in general both, like to check down to running backs and stuff. So I kind of anticipated seeing a big year for Jalen Warren in the receiving game, kind of check downs and short routes and stuff like that. Of course, Jalen was hurt for a while with, what did he have, a knee and also a hamstring or something like that. And so, you didn't see that with him. I thought you'd maybe see some of that with Najee Harris, or if not, maybe that was going to get somebody like Pat Fryermuth involved on these like flat routes or just kind of slipping out after chipping somebody. Really hadn't seen a lot of that, but this game was very different. A ton of success with the checkdowns. Russell Wilson was just taking what was, what was available, and the defense kept leaving that open, and he just kept drilling it. Until they adjusted later in the game, it wasn't as effective. But really, the first quarter and almost the whole first half, he was just feasting with the underneath stuff. And I think entering this game, Pat Fryermuth and Calvin Austin III were tied in terms of receiving yardage for the Steelers, which was kind of interesting. We talked about Pat Fryermuth maybe being the de facto wide receiver 2 entering the year. If not him, who was it going to be? Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin III, Roman Wilson. Well, Roman hasn't played at all, basically. Van Jefferson has done next to nothing, although he had one really great play in this game. And Calvin Austin III's more or less stepped up as that wide receiver too. So it was interesting to me that they entered this game with the same amount of receiving yards rather. I stacked it up against the rest of the league in terms of wide receiver 2s. And it was, I believe, 29th, I think. So the Steelers' wide receiver 2 problem is very much a thing. What we all feared entering the season, it didn't magically go away. It is very much a thing. And why I talk about this is Mike Williams. It became almost a joke during the game. I was counting on Twitter every time a new person was catching the football. And of course, like you just said, we got up to 10 people who caught the football. You had, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people who had over 3 receptions. You had 9 players with over 20 receiving yards. Not one of those, even targets, was at Mike Williams. So another 0, another nothing for Mike Williams. He took it in stride. I think on social media he said something like, we're winning, so, who cares kind of thing, which is great. You'd rather that than him be disgruntled. But what the heck is going on there, Joe? Do you think Mike Williams will get involved, or is this just kind of how it is?
Yeah, I think he's going to get involved more down the stretch. I think at this point, I mean, Russell Wilson just been working with a lot of these guys dating back to when he was first signed. He took him out to what was it, San Diego, and they all worked out together. So at this point, the chemistry is more there with, a Calvin Austin or a Van Jefferson, and Williams is still kind of acclimating and adjusting to the system, to the offense. So he's behind those guys. But I think, he's going to be needed at some point. He was needed against the Commanders when he caught the game-winning touchdown pass. I think down the stretch, especially even this week with, as we'll talk about later, Calvin Austin in concussion protocol, his status for Sunday. still a little bit up in the air. So Williams will, find a way to get a little bit more involved. I don't know if he's gonna set the world on fire, 5 catch, 100 yards or anything, but I think he'll chip in here and there and be, a piece down the stretch. He's still getting on the field. At some point, ball's gonna come to him, and he'll make a play. And maybe he's not the impact player that we thought he might be when they acquired him, although I think expectations are still a little bit tempered there. But I think he's still going to be a piece for this team at some point, at least by the end of the regular season.
Yeah, if nothing else, it's good to have that depth, and they'll need all the depth they can get once the playoffs come, and maybe even a guy like Roman Wilson will be back by then. Who knows? I mean, I wouldn't expect on him to contribute, but he is maybe an option in the playoffs if all else fails. I want to talk a little bit about the defense, though. We spent some time on the offense. 3 takeaways. You had the Nick Herbig strip sack, you had the TJ Watt strip sack, and you had Cameron Hayward batting a ball which fell into the hands of Dante Jackson. Jackson is up to, 5 interceptions now on the season. That is, I believe, the 3rd most in the league, or it was about halfway through the day on Sunday there. I actually haven't checked back to see if that's still the case, but I think he's tied with Marlon Humphrey for 3rd most, or somewhere right around there, which is pretty remarkable. I think that's his career high as well. Nick Herbig seems to just always make those plays whenever it's 3 straight weeks with a forced fumble, which is just ridiculous. He's up to 6 in his career for this season. TJ Watt is up to how many this season? He's up to 5 this season. So Herbig's played significantly less, and he's kind of catching up to Watt in terms of the forced fumbles, which is pretty dang impressive. Joe, of the 3 turnovers that were forced, which one, I guess, impressed you the most?
I'm going to go with the Herbig one just because it led to a defensive touchdown. It was a huge play in the swing of things. And just see his development as a player has been really fun to watch, and see him come through continually, learning from TJ Watt, learning from Alex Highsmith, just the array of pass rush moves, and then the ability to kind of force fumbles with, the chop that TJ Watt. They've talked. TJ Watt said that how Herbig's, a guy that adjusts and learns pretty much everything. He's a sponge. So seeing him learn that and kind of take on the do what Watt does in the way of the forces fumbles was pretty impressive to see. But going back to Dante Jackson, it's pretty crazy at interception in this game, because what was the last time the Steelers had a 40+ game was when they played the Panthers. And that was the game where Antonio Brown completely torched Dante Jackson pretty much all game. So that's how long it's been. I think Jackson was even a rookie that year. So that's how long it's been since the Steelers put up 40+ points in the game. And now he's helping them out with an interception. And he should have taken that to the house. He got tripped up, but he had nothing but green grass ahead of him. That could have been a pick 6 too. So we could have been looking at 2 defensive touchdowns had that not happened. But yeah, defense wasn't a great showing. Obviously, they allowed 31 points because the Bengals got the 6 from the pick 6 from Kent Taylor Britt, but came away with timely turnovers, and that's really key when you're playing a team. I mean, the Bengals offense is really, really good. They've gotten the better of a lot of teams this year, in terms of just putting up a lot of points on the board, but their defense somehow managed to be worse in a lot of these games. But yeah, I mean, wasn't a great showing. Yeah, you'd like to see a little bit better out of Pittsburgh's defense, but the turnovers were huge, and that's something that if they can continue to do it down the stretch and into the postseason, that's what's going to make them a real contender, is being able to force turnovers in key weighty moments.
Yeah, and Joey Porter Jr., 6 penalties, 4 accepted. It was not his finest showing. Mike Tomlin seemed relatively unconcerned today, referred to him as, what did he say? He has a serial killer's mentality, which was an interesting analogy to use, basically saying that he compartmentalizes really well. He doesn't let one bad play kind of bleed over into his mentality, which is, crucial for an NFL cornerback. I mean, even the rule book is just so stacked against these cornerbacks in terms of, I think I looked it up, and it's some ridiculous 140 something defensive pass interference penalties called to, I think it's just 30 something in this entire season on offensive pass interference, just to give you an idea of kind of the slant there. And so, yeah, Joey Porter Jr.'s had, I think this was his 3rd game with 3 or more penalties. This was by far the worst one. I think this was his worst Pro Football Focus grade of his career. He had super high expectations for himself, so that's partially why this is being viewed as a disappointing season. I think there's still some good some good from this season for sure. He's shut down, the Ravens. He bounced back after that bad Commanders game, and he helped shut down Zay Flowers on the Ravens. And I think overall he's improved as a tackler and all like that. But are you concerned with Joey Porter Jr. and do you think these penalty issues will ever go away?
I'm not really that concerned just because, it's kind of one of those things you take the good with the bad. This game, he was bad and there was a lot of bad there. But the game plan to stick him on T. Higgins worked out pretty well because the Steelers, for the most part, outside of the 150-yard reception late, took away Jamar Chase. So good overall defensively. But Porter, I mean, like you said, he played really well against the Ravens. He's had a lot of games this season where he's kind of erased the guy has covered. So um, I think you can live with, a game like this, especially, they won. So it's easier to say you can live with a game like this when you're going to get the games where he's stacking together good plays and taking away the other team's, number one threat. So do I think they're ever going to go away? Maybe. I think we kind of hoped that this season we'd see some growth in that regard. But I mean, he's such a long corner at this point. His tendency to be a little bit grabby it's there. It's something he's got to really, really work hard to kind of eliminate because at times, it just be muscle memory. I mean, there's a play against Cincinnati where the ball was way overthrown and he just kind of needlessly grabbed I think it was Yoshivas in the end zone, giving them the ball the 1 yard line, which something he just didn't need to do. And I think maybe the ball you could have argued was uncatchable too. I
Oh
don't
yeah.
remember if that was one that was uncatchable. I think there's probably two you could have at least, made wondered, they could have let it go because of that. But it might be a part of his game, but if he keeps playing, the way he did against the Ravens or the way he has against other teams this season and has throughout his career where he takes away top receivers or just, big plays on the ball, then I think he can live with it, even if it still is a part of his game. I'm less optimistic that it won't be a part of his game. So I think it's just something you deal with.
Yeah, and this win is twofold for the Steelers because the Ravens lost, which means the Steelers now have a comfortable pad in terms of the AFC North. They have a buffer there, and I think the Steelers, as long as they win two more games, and one of those is against the Ravens, they are the AFC North champions. The Ravens can win out besides that loss to the Steelers, that hypothetical loss, and the Steelers can lose three of the next five. As long as one of those wins is against the Ravens, they are the AFC North champions. So that is a pretty big deal for the Steelers there. And the other kind of big reason why this is an interesting win for the Steelers is because the Bengals now basically will have nothing to play for in that final Week 18 game, which could end up deciding things like the AFC's 1 seed if things, dominoes fall the right way, or potentially the AFC North champion if dominoes fall another way. So, I think the Bengals always are going to want to play spoiler and all like that, but, are you really going to risk, guys like Joe Burrow and exposing him to a defense and stuff like that in the last week of the season when there's nothing to play for? I don't know. We'll see. So, moving on to injuries. Mike Tomlin talked about that a little bit today. Joe, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, so good, very good news on this front. Mike Tomlin said that he fully expects Alex Highsmith to be available against the Browns. Highsmith hurt his ankle, low ankle sprain against the Commanders, so he missed 3 games and he'll be back. Good to have him back. It'll shake some of that rust off ahead of a potential playoff push. Corey Trice Jr., Tomlin said could be available to them this week. He's had his window open. He's been practicing but hasn't played. I believe since week 2, but he's logged full practice the last few weeks. Montravius Adams also had his window open last week, and Tomlin said that he could be available to play Sunday. While on the bad news, Calvin Austin III is up in the air. He's in the concussion protocol, so we'll see if he's able to clear that. If he can, then he'll play Sunday. If not, then the Steelers might have to rely more on Van Jefferson and Mike Williams. Austin's really come on the last few weeks too, so losing him would kind of stink, and he loses the chance for him to kind of stack together another good game and build some momentum. But took a couple hard hits in that game on Sunday against Cincinnati, and hopefully he can get well and get right soon.
Both. Every time he gets hit like that, it's like sending up some prayers because he got folded in half on that second hit, and there's the first hit, it looked like he could have potentially been injured. He got up and he was fine. That second one was even worse. And so it was no surprise that he ended up having a concussion there. But yeah, he has how many touchdowns? 4 touchdowns this season, and 3 in the last 5 games. So 3 with Russell Wilson. They've really kind of formed a pretty strong bond. And this goes back to Russell Wilson praising Calvin Austin frequently in the preseason or in OTAs. He talked about Calvin Austin all the time. Russell, he kind of praises everybody, but it seemed to be a little extra for Calvin Austin. So it seems like they have that connection, which is great to see. Love to see it. He's one of my favorite Steelers right now. I think that's everything for the injuries. Oh, interesting that Highsmith, this will be the first time that the Steelers have Highsmith, Herbig, Preston Smith, and TJ Watt available at the same time. Since Preston Smith joined, you had Herbig out that first game against the Commanders. That was the game that Highsmith got hurt, and so you flip-flopped. You had no Highsmith. You had Herbig the last couple of weeks there. So this is going to be the first time to have all 4, and Mike Tomlin gave a little kind of funny smile when they asked about that, and he said, yeah, it's exciting, isn't it? So we'll see. They've been moving TJ Watt around a little bit more to not just be on that left outside linebacker spot. They've been kind of moving him to try and create good matchups for him, and so I think having all 4 guys creates all the possibilities to do that, and maybe we'll see some packages where 3 of those guys are on the field. Certainly, you can't keep Herbig off the field for too long because this guy is just making so many plays. That being said, cannot forget about Highsmith. A lot of people are trying to say that, has Herbig surpassed Highsmith? I don't think that is the case right now. Highsmith didn't have the sack numbers last year, the crazy sack numbers, but his pressure numbers were insane. I mean, even better than TJ Watt in terms of like a efficiency on a per snap basis. He was getting so much pressure last year, and I think when he's been healthy this year, he's been very, very strong, and I think he's probably their best run defender in terms of the outside linebackers. So Mike Tomlin said there's work for all 3 of those guys. So all 4 of those guys. So I'm looking forward to seeing that for sure. Moving on to the Browns, our last topic here. This is going to be one of those knockdown dragouts, I think. We're talking about a Browns team that also just kind of broke their own set of offensive records. I think Jameis Winston broke the single game passing record for the Browns in a loss, might I add. I think including, I had this up earlier. I don't think I have it up anymore, but I think including the 2 pick sixes that he threw for 660 something yards. Some of those were to the wrong team, and something like 6 touchdowns or 5 touchdowns. Of course, 2 of those were to the wrong team as well. So a very up and down day for Jameis Winston, and it had him praying to the Lord that they would free him of his pick sixes, which was one of the funniest sound bites of the season. Joe, where to start on this Browns rematch?
Yeah, I mean, the Browns are going to come into this game with some confidence given they just beat the Steelers, and excuse me, Winston coming off, 497 yards is pretty impressive no matter what we slice it. Jerry Jeudy had 9 receptions for 235 yards against his former team. I know he talked about during the week about want to have a big game against a team that just traded him off, shipped him off in the offseason, and he certainly did. For the Browns defense, gave up, and I think it was a huge touchdown to Marvin Mims, 93 yards, a beautiful throw by Bo Nix. So this might be, could be another shootout. I don't really think it will be. I think we're going to see a little bit more of the style that we saw 2 weeks ago, even though that was obviously impacted by the weather. I think it'll be more of a, 27-20, 24-20, somewhere in that range sort of game, not the 41-32 we saw last night or the 44-38 we saw for the Steelers last week. But, Winston, heck of a performance. That was just peak Jameis with the throwing to the other team, and then also making some incredible throws to his own guys, and kind of making up for his mistakes by leading a touchdown drive and then making another mistake again. It was everything you want to see out of him. One thing too is Nick Chubb didn't really see a lot of involvement last night. He had as many carries as Jerome Ford. They both had 9. Ford had 9 for 41 yards. Chubb had 9 for 21. Chubb had 2 touchdowns against the Steelers. I think only came on something like 51 yards, so not a huge yardage total, but something to watch going forward if they want to turn to Ford more than they use Chubb. That's kind of a guy that the Steelers will have to maybe worry a little bit less about, but they've seen that Chubb can kind of hurt them before, so I don't think they're really going to be down on his ability, but his usage was definitely something to note last night.
Yeah, it should look like a totally different game. There's not going to be snow. I just looked at the national weather forecast. You're looking at snow all week pretty much in Pittsburgh, but it's stopping on Friday night, it looks like, and it's going to warm up to be about 50 degrees on Sunday. So it should be pretty good December football weather in terms of, no precipitation, not too cold. And so it should look like a totally different game than that snow game. But yeah, it's going to be pretty chippy. You got different storylines to look at. Greg Newsome, calling George Pickens a fake tough guy. George Pickens, of course, probably frustrated at how that all went down and how it made him look in the media, given the fact that, he probably was interfered with a little bit going down the field on that Hail Mary play. And so, he's probably going to be looking to have a big game. And George Pickens had those 2 penalties this week. This probably isn't the week to bet on him cleaning up his act, if I had to guess. But we will see. It would be pretty good if he could. Myles Garrett is another storyline because he more or less called out TJ Watt. It wasn't a direct jab or shot at Watt, but basically saying the defensive player of the year conversation runs through me. There were reports that Garrett was, very upset last year when TJ Watt talked about the defensive player of the year voting, feeling like he should have won. And so, Garrett won round 1, and I bet you all my money that TJ Watt is going to do everything he can to try and win round 2. Let's see, is there anything else we wanted to talk about here, Joe?
No, I think I'm not sure exactly what the scenario is, but I think a win could get the Steelers in the playoffs. And then looking at that, if you look at this game, do you think this is a must win with the Eagles due up now in week 15, Ravens in week 16, Chiefs in week 17, and that's 3 games in 10 days? So does this feel like a must win game?
Um, no, it's not must win because of what I said earlier. The Steelers can lose 3 of 5. I mean, they can even lose 4 of 5 and win the division. Basically, if they beat the Ravens, it's going to be extremely difficult for the Ravens to win the North. And so, if you're in that situation, it's not a must win, but certainly you would like to see them win. The better chance that they have to host a playoff game, and you'd really love for them to keep their odds at, getting a first round bye in the playoffs alive, because right now they are alive. They don't control their destiny like they did a couple of weeks ago, but the Chiefs, they play the Chiefs, and so they can catch up to the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs have a couple of difficult games on their schedule as well. And then the Bills, the Bills will have to lose one for that to happen, but it is definitely within the realm of possibility. So, I would very, very much like to win. You never want to get swept by a division opponent, especially one that's record is this poor, but no, I wouldn't say it's a must win. Do you have a different opinion there?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's a must win. I think it would be nice to kind of build some momentum heading into that stretch, but uh, it that's 3 tough games. We've seen them already beat the Ravens, and the Chiefs have had some flaws this season. The Eagles are playing some really good football right now. So I would like to see them win and keep their momentum alive right now. But even if they do somehow lose to Cleveland this Sunday, I don't think they're going to. I think they're pretty eager to beat them after already losing once. I don't think they're going to lose all 3 of those games in a row. Uh, Afterwards, obviously, an 0-4 stretch would be pretty devastating here. But again, they can beat the Bengals and still get to 10 wins on the season, probably be a playoff team. But so yeah, I don't think it is a must win, but I do think it is a good game to have in their pocket right now. Get to 10 wins and have some momentum for the Eagles, Ravens, and Chiefs.
Looks like the Steelers were. Let's see. When's the last time that the Browns swept the Steelers? Would that have been 2021? Or no? I don't know when the last time is that happened. I think it's been.
Has it ever happened?
Has it ever? Yeah, has it ever happened? I'm
I think
looking.
it was. Let's see. There's a video from ClevelandBrowns.com. It was 1988 was the last time the
Oh
Browns beat the
man.
Steelers.
Yeah. Okay. I'm reading 2 here in 2021, but one was in January, so it was the next season. So my bad on that. But yeah, that is a long time ago. You don't want to be the first team to have that happen to you in 50 years or whatever that is. So. Absolutely not there. That is all of our topics for the day. We do have a listener question, which reminds me if you guys want to have your question answered on a future episode, call that number at the bottom of the screen 412 254 3145. Again, that's 412 254 3145. That's in the show notes on Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're watching. It should be in the description. So if you lost that number, you can give us a call, leave us a voicemail. We will answer your question on a future episode. You can also text the line if you don't want to have your voice heard. That's totally fine. Just give us a text and we'll read off your question on air on a future episode. This one from one of our favorite regulars, Brett from San Angelo, Texas.
Hello, Depot Dive. This is Brett from San Angelo. And my question for you is, Nick Herbig, as his performance in the game last week demonstrates that he seems to have the Watt gene of making big-time plays in big-time moments. My question to you is, has he become a guy that you cannot let get away? Obviously, you can't extend him this year, but has he got there yet where he's a guy you cannot let get away? Thank you very much. You guys do a great job and look forward to hearing the answer.
All right. Thank you, Brett, for the question, as always, there. And I believe you actually asked this question before this most recent game, and it stays pertinent because, yes, Nick Herbig got another big-time play. Like you said, he has that TJ Watt kind of clutch gene to make the big plays in big moments. I think Mike Tomlin said after the game, we expect big things from Nick Herbig, and Nick Herbig expects big things from Nick Herbig. And so they're never surprised. TJ Watt always kind of has fun when Herbig does well and they ask him about it. Watt, you can tell it's kind of a big brother type of situation there. But to your question, is he a must extend kind of guy? Obviously not this upcoming year, but it would be the following year that they would look at an extension for him. Is he a guy that you cannot let get away? Is he like a franchise type kind of cornerstone player for the next decade? Is basically Brett's question. Joe, what's your opinion there?
Yeah, unless he really makes a step to surpass Alex Highsmith in the next 2 years, I think he's a guy that would be really, really nice to have. But if the Steelers already have Highsmith and have Watt, even though both of them will be getting older, so I don't know if he's necessarily a must extend at that point, just because he's going to be costly. And if he's still at that point, your third outside linebacker, how much you really want to spend on a third outside linebacker, even if you do have, a thought of him potentially taking over for them down the line. So that's really the question, because if he keeps playing the way he's playing, somebody will pay him a lot of money. I just don't know if the Steelers are going to give him a contract commensurate with, the top of the market if they still have Watt and Highsmith producing ahead of him.
Yeah, that's tough. I would love to say yes, and I think some way, somehow they're going to, because I don't think they like those kind of homegrown players who seem to be great culture guys. They're kind of carrying the baton of the Steeler way and everything on that defense. I mean, he's taken to, everything that's being taught to him, even going back to, learning from James Harrison at training camp in those pictures that circulated. I mean, this is a guy you do not want to let get away. TJ Watt, I believe he has, let's see, he's under contract through 2025, so they're going to be looking at an extension for him probably this upcoming offseason there. Alex Highsmith, you have him under contract for, when is he done? His contract goes through 2027. And so you'd have to make the Herbig decision following the 2025 season. I suppose you could wait until after 2026 just to kick that can down the road. Yeah, I mean, that's going to be tough because you're going to be making that Watt decision next year. That seems like a no-brainer. You're going to extend him. And then I think you have to basically let Herbig, his rookie contracts run out, and then make the decision as he is a unrestricted free agent, which means he's going to be able to negotiate against the rest of the league. He seems like a guy who might be a Pittsburgh lifer or wants to be a Pittsburgh lifer. He kind of has that kind of vibe, if you ask me. But it's going to be difficult, I'll say that. But certainly with Watt getting older, he's 30 right now, and Highsmith's 27. By that point, when you're making that Herbig decision, both Highsmith's going to be nearly 30 and Watt's going to be, way closer to the end of his career than the beginning of it. So long-winded way of saying I don't know. I would love for it to happen, though. I mean, gosh, he's one of the most efficient players on a per-snap basis that I've ever seen. So you'd hate to see that get away. It's just going to be tough. So, Brett, we appreciate your question as always. And once again, if you guys want to have your question answered, 412-254-3145. That's it for this week. I'm Ross. That's Joe. And we're going to be watching some Hard Knocks here in a couple hours. I hope you guys enjoy that tonight. We'll catch you guys next week with plenty more to talk about.